The company I sold twice was called Postal Facilities Limited, and basically it was advertising on a post box. So we invented a post box with an advertising panel on it, and then we managed to sell that business to an advertising company for its advertising revenue, but we always knew that it would be great for the postal value. We decided we needed to sell that business because we'd run out of money. So we'd installed half a dozen boxes, and our other business, which had been funding it for 2.5 years, was creaking at the seams somewhat, because we were using that for our income and to develop the postbox business, which, although we'd actually only produced and installed half a dozen, had consumed a lot of our cash. So we decided if we could partner with a big advertising company, somebody who could garner the advertising revenue more easily than we could, then we could grow it better. So in a nutshell, we sold it to a company called More O'Farrell Adshell, who we partnered with and worked with for 3.5 years. And they took on the selling of the advertising whilst we project managed the petrol companies and the installation of the post boxes. For the first sale we got a great deal because we'd signed up all of the petrol companies, so we had contracts for thousands of post boxes, which meant thousands of advertising hoardings right where people were buying something, petrol or confectionery. So that was a great part of the business, but the other great part was we'd signed up a big advertiser to go on the first 1,000 boxes at £1,000 a year. So that's £1 million worth of revenue in a contract, and a whole host of sites to advertise on. So basically we sold it for much more value than we would have done just for a business with 6 post boxes. There's an interesting story about when we sold the company, because when More O'Farrell gave us an offer, we actually considered that that was quite fantastic, and I phoned my business partner and brother and said, we've had a great offer, and he said, well, we should accept it. And I said, well, one of the golden rules of business is to never accept the first offer. So even though this was a fantastic offer, we decided not to speak to them until they rang us. So 1 week later, having nearly dialed them at least 300 times and not slept for a week, they finally rang and said, we've not heard from you. And I said, well, you wouldn't, would you? He said, why not? I said, well, if you're going to insult us with that offer, then we're never going to speak again. So within a week they'd doubled the offer, and then we accepted it. When I sold the business to More O'Farrell, what we negotiated was what was called a sell-on clause, whereby if the business got sold again, it's also called an anti-embarrassment clause. We wouldn't be embarrassed by the fact that it then got sold for even more money. More O'Farrell wanted to drop that because they were worried it would have some implication, but the implications were good for them, because if we sold the business again, they got all of their money back that they'd paid us, and then we got the upside. So basically we decided, after we'd installed just over 1,200 post boxes, that the value then, given there was lots of letters being posted, bearing in mind this is before the days of email had really kicked in, that the value was in the post. So we managed to get both the German and the Dutch post offices to bid for the business, because they thought that the Royal Mail was going to be privatised, which subsequently took nearly 18 more years. And then the Royal Mail decided, as a defensive measure, to buy the business, take the 1,200 post boxes into their network as the owner of them, and they subsequently closed most of them down, but there's still some in existence today. What I learned from the postal facilities process was that the main thing you've got to do is build a business on very strong foundations, specifically if you're going to run it, well, run it for income, but specifically if you're going to sell it. So everything was very neat and tidy within the business, and it was all very contractually based. So we had to make sure that all the contracts with the petrol companies and the advertisers, for example, were in place, and as importantly, the sale agreement with More O'Farrell, because had we not negotiated hard on that, then we wouldn't have realised the same value when we sold it to Royal Mail.